Have you ever heard of a case where bodies suddenly disappear and the victim's wounds miraculously heal themselves? This is not a fictional story or a horror movie, this is a real case that happened on October 13, 2024 in Tahara, New Mexico. It all started with a panicked 911 call, leading the police to a house covered in blood, but no one was found inside. The only person present at the scene was a young man, with a lifeless look in his eyes and a chilling testimony. What really happened that night? The answer is more horrifying than you can imagine. Have you ever wondered, what happens when a peaceful night is suddenly interrupted by gunshots? When those sounds are not just random but a sign of a terrible crime? On October 13, 2024, in the town of Tahara, New Mexico, a man called 911 in a panic. His voice was shaking, mixed with extreme anxiety. He said that he lived at 51 Young Road, and that the house next door, where a family had lived for many years, was not right. I own that house. I rented it to a family for many years. They were good people, they helped me with the farm. But today, no one showed up. No one was doing their daily chores, the man explained. He continued to say that about an hour and a half ago, he heard multiple gunshots. Then, about 10 minutes later, a single gunshot rang out in the quiet night. Was someone dead? Was it a shooting? Was it an accident? Whatever it was, the police couldn't ignore the call. They immediately dispatched a team to the scene. And when the police arrived, they had no idea that they were about to face one of the strangest and most chilling cases ever. But what was waiting for them there? A murdered family? Or something even worse? Have you ever heard a strange noise in the middle of the night? A noise that makes your skin crawl, you don't know where it's coming from, but somehow, you know something's wrong. On the evening of October 13, 2024, in Tahara, New Mexico, a distressed 911 call came in. The caller was a man who lived in the area, and he was in a panic. I heard a lot of gunshots. 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. Then, a moment later, one last shot. And, no one showed up. No one said anything. The house next door was eerily silent. The man owned the house, but had rented it to a family for years. They were nice people who often helped him with his daily chores. But today, things weren't normal. They always come over here to help me, work on the farm. But today, no one showed up. All 4 of their cars were parked in front of the house. But the door was still closed. No movement. I was worried. What had happened to them? Are they in danger? The police can't wait any longer. A patrol team is immediately dispatched to the scene. And when they arrive, they have no idea that they are about to enter a real nightmare. What will the police find inside the house? A murder? An unprecedented mystery? Prepare yourself, because this story will make you shiver. The police arrived at the scene quickly. The house was silent in the dark, but the atmosphere around it was indescribably heavy. Everything was too quiet, too unnatural. The officers approached, weapons ready. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. They called out, but only an eerie silence answered. And then, the door opened. A young man stood before them. His hands were covered in blood. The young man was Adley, the son of the family living in the house. He seemed bewildered, but not frightened. And then, when the police began to question him, Adley uttered these strange and unbelievable words. My family, they tried to kill me. They had knives, they rushed at me. I had no choice. But the scariest thing was yet to come. When the police asked about the bodies of the people in the house, Adley said something that sent chills down everyone's spines. I saw them wounded, but then, the wounds disappeared. They got up, they attacked me again. I had no choice. I had to do it. The wounds disappeared. The police couldn't believe their ears. But when they stepped inside, they knew something was seriously wrong. Inside the house, blood was everywhere, on the walls, on the floor, on the bed. But strangely, there was not a single body. If Adley had killed his family, then where were the bodies? The police stood in the middle of the house filled with the smell of blood, but the most terrifying thing was not the red stains on the walls or the drops of blood congealed on the floor, but the absence of the bodies. If a massacre had happened here, where were the victims' bodies? The officers searched every room, every corner, every cupboard. But they found nothing but blood stains. The furniture was still intact, there were no signs of a violent struggle, but the atmosphere in this house was too strange. Adley was still being held outside by the police, he kept whispering something, as if talking to someone invisible. At that moment, an officer went out to the backyard and discovered something horrifying. On the grass, there were long blood trails, as if someone had been dragged away, or crawled out on their own. "Everyone, come out here now." An urgent call rang out. The police immediately rushed to the backyard. And then, they saw 3 bodies lying face down on the ground. It was Adley's father, mother, and sister. Finally, they found the bodies. But the story didn't end there. An officer stepped closer to check, and immediately, he recoiled, eyes wide with horror. The bodies' mouths were foaming white, their bodies were still twitching slightly. Are they dead, or are they still alive? Adley, who was now handcuffed and put in the police car, turned his head, his eyes lifeless, he said a sentence that made everyone freeze in place. "They're not dead. They'll get up." This story was slowly becoming too much to imagine. The atmosphere was so heavy that no one dared to breathe loudly. The 3 bodies lay motionless on the grass, but what made the officers break out in a cold sweat was the slight convulsions that continued. White foam was coming from their mouths, and their flesh was still warm, as if they had died only a few minutes ago. But according to the reports, they had been dead at least an hour. The rescue team was quickly called to the scene. As the paramedics examined the bodies, one of them muttered, "What the hell is going on?" But before anyone could ask, Adley spoke from inside the police car. He didn't scream, he didn't cry. His voice was eerily calm, as if he had accepted something that no one else understood. "Don't you think they're strange? They're not dead, they just haven't gotten up yet." The officers turned to look at Adley. In his eyes, there was no fear, no remorse, just an incomprehensible calm. An officer tried to reassure Adley. "Hey, your family, they were badly injured. But we found them. Can you tell us what happened?" Adley tilted his head, looked at the bodies, and frowned slightly. "You don't understand, they died once. But the wound disappeared, then they opened their eyes. They tried to attack me. I had to do it again." A chill ran down the spines of everyone present. The wound disappeared. They opened their eyes. It was impossible. But in front of them, the 3 bodies were still twitching slightly, as if their bodies were trying to fight death. Adley's words could just be the hallucinations of a lunatic, but looking at what was happening, was it really just a hallucination? At this moment, the rescue team declared that all 3 people were completely dead and had no signs of life. They were loaded into the ambulance, ready to be sent for an autopsy. But the story did not end there. Because as soon as the bodies were placed on the stretchers, something terrible happened. Adley was taken to the police station that night. He didn't resist, didn't scream, didn't even show any fear. He just sat there, watching everything with a blank gaze. The police took him to the interrogation room. It was a small room, the pale yellow light shining on the cold metal table. "Adley, tell me everything from the beginning." A detective sat across from him, his tone was firm but still tried to maintain patience. Adley smiled faintly. "I told you, they're not dead." The detective frowned, taking notes. "They're dead. We checked. You're the prime suspect. Now tell me, what really happened in that house?" Adley tilted his head, his eyes vague. I heard sounds. At first it was whispers. Then, sound waves. It was in my head, over and over. I tried to ignore it. But then they heard it. Who heard it? My family. My father, my mother, my sister. And then, they changed. The air in the room became suffocating. Changed? What do you mean? Adley slowly looked up at the detective. They weren't themselves anymore. Outside the room, the officers watched through the one-way mirror. No one said anything, but everyone felt something was wrong. And then, the scariest thing happened. Adley began to talk, but not to the detective. He spoke to someone in the room, that no one could see. Just as the police were trying to figure out Adley's story, shocking news came. 3 bodies had disappeared from the autopsy room. No trace. No sign of forced entry. No one had seen anyone enter or leave. But the bodies that the medical staff had declared dead, were no longer there. The police immediately returned to the interrogation room. But when they entered, Adley had changed completely. He smiled, a mysterious, chilling smile. I told you, they're not dead. No one understood what was going on. But one thing was certain, something was terribly wrong with the case. Adley was eventually detained pending trial. Psychiatrists assessed him as having severe mental disorders, possibly paranoid schizophrenia. But the biggest question remains. If Adley was just a delusional person, who took the bodies? And more importantly, where are they? No one has an answer. The case has never been satisfactorily explained. The bodies of Adley's parents and sister have never been found. And to this day, no one knows exactly what happened on the night of October 13, 2024, in the town of Tahara. Was it just a murder case, or was there something more sinister going on? This is a haunting story, not only because of the brutality of the case but also because of the unanswered questions. We may never know what really happened that night. But one thing is certain, people are afraid of what they don't understand. Whether you believe Adley's testimony or not, this case has left a big question mark in the history of crime, a mystery that may never be solved. If you find this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next mysterious, creepy stories. What do you think about this case? Leave a comment below.